Board
This
member.
conference will now be recorded.
Can you guys hear me? So roll call. Sawatsky,
Here.
Ammon,
Here.
Conold,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Poe,
Here.
Councilmember Muskie, Councilmember Nelson.
Here.
So I'm counting 7, including myself, and 1 absent, and that's Sean. Item number 2 on the agenda, if I could get a motion to approve the minutes from July 8th, 2020.
So move. This is Dennis.
Second, John Conold.
Got a motion to approve and a second the minutes from July 8th, 2020. Any discussion?
Are we prepared to accept the special meeting we had Monday? Has everyone read those minutes that Janelle sent out earlier? Would you accept that, Dennis, as a friendly amendment to accept both minutes?
Yes, I will. Good idea.
Okay, so I've got a motion from Dennis to accept the minutes from Monday's special meeting along with approving the minutes from July 8th, 2020. And then is that still a second, John?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from July 8th, 2020 and the minutes from August 10th, 2020 from the special meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that motion carries. Item number 3 on the agenda. I don't know if Mr. Okins is available tonight. I don't see if we were going to maybe get a financial update. I think that was Steve. Mary, was that what we were thinking?
Steve's not on. Yeah, he had sent the.
Okay.
Did everybody get the sales tax receipts email from Steve?
Yeah, I think I did. I don't know if everybody else, I don't know if anybody wants to do a quick recap. It looked like we were trending in the right direction there for June, I believe.
Matt?
Yeah, Brian?
Yeah, I'll just step in. Steve may show up. I was just up in his office.
Brian, could you address that?
Yeah, basically, we've received our second notification from the state and settlement, which brings the latest full month to around the $180,000 mark, which is great. It's better than $166,000 mark, but their projections for the first payment, which, dropped from, 150 some thousand down to 134. So there are variations between months, and like as I explained many meetings ago, we never really know why one month is high and one month is low, and it changes year by year. So if the next month is projected to be down, not a big concern. But if we see 3 months in a row, it go from 134 to 124 to 114, I think we have a concern there. So I'm not too concerned. It looks like it's headed in the right direction. And Steve has prepared a new Excel sheet from Doug Green, Baker Tilly firm that we utilize for financial analysis. And he'll be proposing that, to the finance committee so they understand where we are at. He's still kind of working the bugs out of it. And but it looks like it's in a positive mode. And it also looks after analysis that, as I said, I think at the last meeting, it looks like we can do a majority. The overall revenue stream is standing up pretty good, that we can be in the 20 to 24, $1 million area. So we have some breathing room. Currently we're at 5, 3 million for Robbins Island and 2 for Swanson. So we have the ability to add on more projects, but obviously it needs to go through the approval process, and finance needs to feel comfortable with the projections, which I hope they'll see at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Any questions on the financials? Otherwise, it's a month-to-month deal, it looks like. So item number 4 on the agenda, budget update regarding architect liability expenses. And is this something, Brian, that you're up to date on? I don't have any information on this topic.
Me either. We just received the certificate of insurance for the Swanson project. So we can obviously, use that to keep moving forward.
I don't know who put that item on the agenda. If somebody has some information that we should be aware of or updated on, otherwise, I guess we can put that aside, and maybe if somebody wants to do some research, figure out. I don't know how that got on the agenda. I apologize. So
Matt,
yeah,
I think it fits in with what we're going to bring, what should be brought forward from a financial standpoint. I mean, there was a message carried to us about the liability that we had. Well, some of that will be absorbed in the bonding that we're doing for the 2 projects we're moving forward on, but it was implied that we would have a fair amount of cash that we would have to pay for those. So I think when we get the financial information, we should, I think, hopefully assume that we will find out where we're at from a liability standpoint too. So
okay.
we can ask
Thank
for
you.
that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda. So this one will take a little bit of time. I'll do this one's actually, I'll present this and then we'll go through the updates from all the committees. Everybody should have the document. I want to give a little background maybe on this topic. And but if you don't have the document, let me know. I'll try to put it on my screen of the proposal that I put together. I just wrote some stuff up with some notes, and I know everybody's received it on email. So where we're at with I think we kind of are talking about 2 categories, just a little bit of a recap. I think we're all kind of on the same page. I don't want to make any assumptions, but for the most part, the kind of message that I think we all are agree to is that we want to the next 2 years fund as many of the projects that are outdoors, that don't add any overhead expenses to the city budget, that don't add staffing, that are low maintenance. And there's kind of 4 things that I think we've targeted. One would be Robbins Island. It doesn't need to be staffed. It's outdoors. It's safe. Swanson Field, which we're making progress outdoors. Again, no full-time staff generally out there. Then you take the fields. We'll talk about that later in the deal. We'll get an update there on fields. The turf fields and the ball fields would be next to go outdoors. And then the other one that I've got that I think fits this phase is the outdoor covered rec center that was in the flyers, and you guys all saw photos of that on your email when that sent to you. That's a concept. There's 2 of them out there. There's one in Edina and there's one in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. The idea with this facility, which should project under $2 million, it's concrete, it's excavation, it's boards and glass, and it's a roof with some lights, and it's in the master plan towards the back of the Blue Line Arena. And basically it would provide for programming for, you can put ice in there 3 months out of the year, you can play basketball, you can play pickleball, you can play soccer, you can play catch. This morning, if it's raining out, Park and Rec Center, the idea the city Park and Rec Center would program that facility. It kind of got to me, where with some conversations with some different people about now is the time I wanted to bring that to the committee and see if we want to make a request that the subcommittee of the event center subcommittee bring back to us a concept. Because if you think about this fall, or you think about this winter, next spring, you know, just the situation we're in, I don't believe we're going to want to build a lot of indoor facilities right now that are expensive and that add maintenance. That's the community center, it's the event center, it's the bubble, it's the locker rooms. And so the $2 million kind of, the next two projects, and we'll talk more about that, are probably looking like they're going to get funded from our priority list. And the council will decide if it gets funded, but the next coming from us would be the turf fields. And then this, I think, fits in there for 2020, 2021. And the idea would be we would start that process so we could start planning and budgeting and whatnot. So if we had $6 million for fields and $2 million for the outdoor covered facility, there's still $8 million set aside for an event center for that group. And that obviously is on hold. Those architects are on hold as well. So this is something that I thought Gretchen did a great job a couple meetings ago presenting what they would like to put forward, and it was building locker rooms at the Civic Center and doing some remodeling out there for about 1.4 million. That has also been emailed to everybody. My thought would be, I would like to see our committee say, that's great, let's put that aside for now, and let's maybe look at going this direction and building something in case technically this winter, skating outside, or next spring or summer, the more facilities outside that we can use. So I won't go line by line. You guys have all had this. I sent it at least a week ago. But this is something that I wanted to propose to our group to say, are we doing the right thing? I'm all supportive of locker rooms and doing some remodeling at the Civic Center, but I don't think the timing right now makes any sense. Because I'm out at the Civic Center almost every day right now, and there's not one individual using a locker room where they're getting dressed out in the parking lots, and that's probably going to continue for some time. So I don't think it would look good to the public if we're constructing locker rooms this fall or next spring or summer. And it's early. I mean, it's not, but I was also talking to a few other members that, you know, let's talk about this now so we don't go down a road and then have to change it up later. So my proposal or my thoughts would be, and then I'll stand for questions, is that we should try to get the concept and something back to our group to take a look at and have this move up the priority list. That's how I feel, and I think I covered most of the points. But let me back off and let you guys speak to this topic and let me know what the thoughts are. The general attitude is I'd like to hear for it or against it if we want to try to go this direction. It's going a different direction from the event center committee. Right now, the plan is that they're going to try to move forward on locker rooms and remodeling. My thought was, let's direct them, and hopefully they'd be open to building an outdoor rec center that would be used 12 months out of the year. So thoughts, questions, comments?
John Conold,
Okay, if I go, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my only thought on this is when we started this whole thing, this project, and going to the voters, we looked at two things. What does I guess the big thing is, what do we not have in our city that we can get for our community members and the area around us? And then also, once we passed it and stuff, we need to stick to what we went to the voters for. And that's a big thing that I think our committee is kind of laid the groundwork for. And what we need to do as a committee is make sure that all of our committees are sticking to what was on the flyers, what we voted for. And that's kind of what our mission is as the Invest in Willmar board. So that's my 2 cents on your idea, Matt, so far.
Thank you.
This is
Yeah.
Gretchen. I can't raise my hand because I don't have video, so.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Gretchen.
Raising my hand. If I could, I'd like to make a statement that is from our committee, and it honestly could probably just be our report of sorts for this meeting because we're not going to have anything else to share. But this is a collective statement by all of our committee members. We have agreed that this is what we feel as a committee. We do not agree with or support the idea that's being brought forward today. We have already brought forth our decision for the use of the 2 million. The purpose of our committee is to make the decision regarding the monies available to us, and our priority list should be honored. If the recommendations of our committee are going to be constantly questioned and overturned by anybody, then what is truly the purpose of our committee? We have already lost multiple committee members who are becoming really frustrated with this process based on the actions of certain individuals. And we have done our due diligence in evaluating this project and making a good decision on how to proceed. Also, specifically toward Matt, you chose to step off our committee, therefore giving up being part of the decision on this project and where the money goes. We feel that this is a personal agenda being pushed. There has even been emails back and forth, leaving certain people off, withholding information from certain committee members, just all sorts of things that we just do not agree with. And we feel that needing to change or override the plans of a committee is just not okay. It's also our committee seems to be the only one that's happening to. So we feel like there's a personal agenda being pushed here. Being a part of a committee and a board is standing by that group decision, even if you don't personally agree with it. And we just don't agree with things being overridden that we have already made our decision on. So we feel like this is a personal agenda being pushed and one that we don't agree with. Also, many parts of this new idea are not what voters voted on. They voted on an outdoor rink, not a combination of a rec and event center and outdoor skating rink. And so although this is a creative new idea, we feel like it's an unnecessary combination of things that are eventually going to be duplicated once we do build the rec and event center in its entirety, and also portions of the rec field and the bubble. We feel like as a committee, we should be the ones deciding on this new idea. So the fact that it wasn't even brought to us first, since we're the ones charged with making the decision on how we felt the 2 million should be spent, we felt was also just kind of a backhand to our committee. Some other points on some of the specifics. In your list of things, it talked about curling. There's absolutely no curler who's going to use an outdoor skating or hockey rink to do curling. They're completely different ice. There's not been a decision made at this point on winter sports, usage of ice, locker rooms, things like that. So to say that that's not going to be needed, we don't think is correct either. The architect process has already been done for our facility. We spent, what, 200,000 to already put that all together, and probably don't think taxpayers would appreciate literally throwing that all away to start over on something brand new. It's not an enclosed space, so to think that weather, heat, other elements are going to be blocked seems a little far-fetched to use that as a reason. And also, we do feel like what we proposed does fit what we brought to voters. They voted on office and meeting space. Now, yes, maybe it originally was talking about it being on a second level, up above, blah, blah, blah. What we're trying to do is actually save some money, reuse the space we already have, and get that for them. Park and Rec is partially, they manage and staff a lot of these facilities. So it's kind of absurd to think that their offices wouldn't be affected or changed at some point in this process. And the fact that we're letting so much of this be held up by COVID and the virus, which is not going to be around forever, we don't feel like we should be planning around that. All of these projects, all 6 of them were voted on with no basis or plans because of what's currently going on, and we feel that it needs to stay that way. So that is the thoughts and comments from our committee based on this new proposal. I just wanted to share that. That's where we all stand.
Good. Thank you, Gretchen, for your comments. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Audrey.
I wanted to ask Mr. Colnold to, he in his statement, what your understanding was that you went to the voters for. And I was trying to get back to your original sheet that we've referenced multiple times, and we did that on Monday night also. And so I'm wondering if you would be willing to clarify your statement with how you feel we went to the voters.
Right, I'm looking for that as well in my emails of the exact things as Gretchen was speaking. I think we just need to continue to use that, those bullet points that we had on our flyers and we had in our discussions about what facilities that we went to the public for, and we've knocked on doors and things. So does anybody have that information, that flyer out on the topics that we used we're going to the voters for?
I mean, the outdoor rink is on the flyer that we dropped 10,000 flyers off in the city of Willmar and generated multiple conversations. It was never intended to be ice for 12 months because that's obviously not realistic. The idea that that would also be used for farmers markets, for potential wedding receptions, for potential pickleball, that has always been the case. It's never been refrigerated. And yes, I don't agree with the direction that the committee's going. We're talking about a lot of people that voted based on that project, and especially now with what's going on, I do strongly feel like that committee is going down a direction and decided to go here. There's remodeling costs in there for offices. That's not what we went to the voters for. So I'm just saying, I just have a disagreement. It's nothing personal against Gretchen or any of the committee members. There's only a couple people left on that committee. And yes, I did leave because I was frustrated and it was a conflict of interest. And we spent hundreds of hours going door to door and people aren't going to go the way the vision that we all talked about. Yes, it's very, very frustrating. So I'll leave it at that and I'll let others speak.
Audrey?
So a second part of that question was in the information that you sent out, Matt, you referenced that remodeling the rec offices is not what tax dollars are for. There was, Dr. Tony, you made a statement on Monday night expressing concern about how far behind the city was with some of the projects and, you know, what tax dollars should be used for, or what local option sales tax dollars should not be used for. And it made me think if that was something you were thinking about on this project also. And so I asked that question of, is it remodeling rec offices? Is this the right time to do that in light that we don't know when we're going to be able to do more of the event center? Or was that a comment that you made strictly for Swanson Fields, or did you feel that way about the event center also?
Tony?
Thank you, Council Member Nelson. Yeah, it was in response to both. I think Park and Rec offices, you know, we talked about additional meeting rooms as part of the event center, as part of, you know, places for people to gather, as well as an indoor playground that's referenced in our brochure. But I don't think that the local option sales tax dollars should go towards new Park and Rec offices or remodeling, simply because Community Ed and Rec and, you know, the Park and Rec and the school district dissolved their relationship. I don't think that's our responsibility with local option sales tax dollars to fund that. I think that should be a separate budget item for the city. And that was correct on the Swanson Field. I think, you know, that brown building, like we talked about Monday, is, I mean, we've all known it's not in good shape. And if push comes to shove, I think we need to focus our dollars on the fields and upgrades to the fields, both softball and baseball. That picnic shelter and then the kids playground at Swanson are excellent. And if the city can help fund their upgrade to that building to get it to the way it needs to, and if we can help with the concession stand expansion there, I think that's totally appropriate. I was just looking at the brochure. I have it, and then my PowerPoint that I went around, and I can respond to Gretchen's concerns. We always knew that the outdoor covered rink is only going to be in use, you know, 3 to 4 months out of the year. The other 8 to 9 months, that was going to be pickleball courts, tennis courts, double lined, farmers market, Robbins Island, Rock and Robbins could go under there, or we could have outdoor concerts. That could be the staging area. We talked about renting it for family reunions and things like that. And so I think that's part of the event center, whatever you want to call it, a covered rink. That was all part of our initial discussion, our presentation to groups around the city and then to the voters. And then I think regardless if curling is involved or not, the logistics of 2 sheets of ice with 3 big groups using the Civic Center, if we had that outdoor ice, that frees up space for figure skating and it frees up space for the curling to do that. And we can still run our programs without having to reshuffle or cut back on times for people. And my own personal opinion, I think a city our size and we only have 2 hours a week that we have public open skating at the Civic Center is that we can do better than that. And I think with outdoor ice, we can free up some more figure skating or open skating time for people.
I want to explain what Tony said to that is what that means. Back to Gretchen's point, I understand figure skating and curling won't use the outdoor ice, but what it means is we can move little kids hockey. We can move pee-wee practices out there that could potentially give figure skating and curling some more hours so they can grow their programs. I've heard that before. They'll never use that ice. I'm saying that it's no problem on a 20-degree night to send little kids outside. They'll absolutely love it. All of a sudden, boom, maybe we can give curling and figure skating another opportunity to add some ice. So I wanted to address that point, and thank you for your comments, Tony. Dennis.
Actually, I think Brian had his hand up before I did, Matt. So maybe we should call on Brian, if that's okay, because he had his hand up before I did.
Oh, sorry, Brian. I didn't see who had their hand up. Brian, go ahead.
I appreciate all the dedication, that the group has and the passion they have for all their projects. And as I've known for many, many years, if not decades, the devil's in the details. I'm going to take a step back and just kind of talk about Swanson Field and in general, some concepts. And that is when we started talking about Swanson Field, we got into a debate about, well, should we do orange or should we do blue? What about shifting all our efforts to blue and then just raising orange up just a little bit? I do not believe in the referendum, nor in the state legislative act that was signed by the governor, that there were specific details that get to that minutia.
Don't move, Brian.
What's that?
Don't move. Just stay still when you're talking.
Okay. That the details were not put on paper. Okay. And I use that because that as an example because that's fairly recent. Now let's go to the event center, and if the idea was to expand or make the locker rooms better, and they impacted the offices, let's say they were right next to each other, and they said we're going to take offices to make the locker rooms better, we would be rebuilding new offices. And so my argument to that, it was not in the language, it was not sold, it was because it's never gotten down to that detail. There's always a potential to rearrange things. We saw this at Swanson. We saw it at Robbins Island. We'll see it in every project that the plan is subject to change. Okay, so that's my first comment is that we were arguing the fine details when in fact there are many things that were not going to be in the language that was adopted, but are part of the analysis and design. So that's the first thing. The second thing I guess I want to point out is, I appreciate the subcommittees. They're bringing their plan forward. If you remember what the city council said at one point in time, we're not going to make the decision. We're going to let the Invest in Willmar and the subcommittees decide what they should do, when they should do it, what the priorities are, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess I'm just pointing that out because it seems like that we're saying, yeah, it's okay if you think like I think. I'll go along with the subcommittee, information, as long as you think like I think. But if you don't think like I think, then Invest in Willmar is going to negate out your efforts and do what we want to do anyway. Well, then that opens up the door that the city council says, well, we have ideas too, and we don't think that the Invest in Willmar is on the right track, and we're going to change things again too. So I was seeing this process of being fairly fluid and fairly democratic to some extent, and putting the onus on those committees that were closest to that topic. And it's just concerning to me that now we have somebody who says, well, I don't like what I see, and therefore we're gonna change it. So those are my two comments. So you either trust the subcommittees like we did with Swanson, we let the subcommittee do their decisions and brought it forward. Why aren't we trusting the other subcommittees? And that's a question I just posed to everybody.
It's a fair question. Thank you for your comments. Dennis?
Okay, some good points. I like the thoughts that Matt has brought forward. I think that makes sense. And when he started out talking about it, I was maybe naive, and I was hopeful that the event center subcommittee might see the merit in that. Maybe they've talked about it, but I was hoping there'd be a way that we could get the two sides together. I don't know if that's possible now. So we're in a conundrum. I agree, we don't necessarily want to micromanage this thing. So I'm not sure where we go. We're in an awkward place, but I do like the idea of an open air slab of cement that you could put ice on or whatever. I kind of like that idea. That's where I am right now.
Thank you, Dennis. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you for the comments that everybody's had up to this point. And I think that when we take a look at what was presented to the council, and I think back to the final day when we were putting all the dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and we brought the issue forward of the community center, and that we should bring the community center into the equation and add another $2 million. I think that's an example of the fluid movement of what happened when the committee structure was loosely fit prior to us as a organization appointed by the council to make these decisions. And so I think we need to keep open-minded as far as what we do. I do agree with you, Matt, in the fact that, and Tony, that we should not be paying for things that the council should have been paying for years ago. I think Audrey mentioned it on Monday night. If there's things that we need to put into our budgeting process, let us know that, and we'll work through that budgeting process to make that happen. I'm concerned that what I'm hearing is going against what the committee had said they wanted to do, and the committee process then appears to have less of an influence than it probably should have. So we're walking a very tight rope here, and it's a balancing act. The power is in the Invest in Willmar committee, and the subcommittees report to the Invest in Willmar committee. As everyone knows, I don't vote on that committee, but it's something that we really have to be careful, because as in other boards and commissions that are appointed by the, or recommended by the mayor and appointed by the council, those positions can get real fluid real quick if there's dissension that happens amongst the ranks. So we have to be very careful how we proceed here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nelson.
what if both sides are right here? You know, I'm just going to put finance hat on and say, we've now had a look at our local option sales tax dollars and we know what we can do this year. We're evaluating what we can do next. And, you know, we asked for prioritizations, but they were somewhat subjective. And I'm sensitive to the fact that the event center committee did not meet regularly, and there's different influences there, and it's unfortunate that it went down the path that it did, but that's where we're at right now. But we don't have to decide this right now. We don't know what we're going to have available to spend next year, but what if both of you are right? What if there's a version that could fit to do those projects at the event center as part of our next step? And I think some of the things that, Matt, you put in there, you're asking for them to evaluate again, but what if we just step back and look at a different plan versus saying one side or the other side is wrong? Maybe there's room to reevaluate. The other question that I had was, the outdoor rinks were still in the plan, correct? So the question that came to my mind is, if we spend $2 million of the event center money now, does it change what we can and cannot do for the event center project as a whole? And, you know, if we said there's not enough money, what's going by the wayside? And has that committee evaluated what they won't do if so I'm conflicted with where we're at and what we do next, but I'm also concerned that we're trying to make a decision when we don't have the financial information in front of us with how to prioritize what projects are next. So sorry if I'm talking in circles, but I just am really struggling with making a decision and I spoke up with the fields too, until we know what we can financially do. I think we've got our plate full with what we're working on right now, and they're great things for the community and there's great things to come. And I think we just got to find a way to do it right. And I'll quit with that.
Couple of comments that kind of triggered this topic again, that came up from multiple conversations, and all of you know that I'm involved with the skating community, and I get asked multiple times, what do we need to do? Where do we go? Do we got to go to the council meetings? Nonstop. This was a big deal. It's gotten pushed to the side. And the issue I have with it is there is, you know, I think next year we're gonna provide some funding for fields, and we want to get some funding to the event center committee. We kind of targeted that $2 million part, separate from the event center. The idea came up with right now with, yes, we could use some locker rooms out there and upgrade some things. But the other issue that's come up that's been a huge problem, and this is kind of a sore subject, and this is a little bit personal. And I have friends and family members that are involved with curling, but we have spent multiple conversations talking about curling in front of our architects that the city's spending money on, and they're not part of our program. They were invited to be part of our program. They weren't when we went to the voters. They decided to do something different, which I respect, and I actually understand why they did that. So again, I'm constantly getting this curling piece, and that's been an issue. So yes, I've been very frustrated, and because I've communicated or emailed or texted a few people on the side for their opinions on things, everybody does that every single day. That's actually a really offensive comment that someone would make. It's not like we're in Washington, D.C. here regarding a rec center. The other thing I wanted to mention is what I would be willing to do tonight is I would be willing that we vote on this concept. Which one do we want to go with? Because I do think in 2020 and 2021, we're going to have some money come in, and we're going to get some money to the rec fields, and we're going to get some money to the event center. So I'm perfectly fine that this is on record. Part of this is I wanted this on record, because when I get asked in public, why are you building locker rooms? Where's the outdoor rec center? I want to be able to tell them, and it is going to be on the record, that I did propose it. So I'm fine with the locker rooms there. I get that. We're not going to keep everybody happy. I completely disagree with the direction. It's nothing personal. Gretchen is an awesome person. Beth and Rob are great people. but this is not the direction that we were going to go. So what I'd like to do, and I might make the proposal or the motion tonight, and then if it's dead in the water, we can all move on from it. But I do think it's got to go one way or the other, because we got to decide. We can't just decide we want to get some money to these two groups. And that's my opinion. And I do think I represent the majority of the people. I do believe I represent the public, and this is the direction that it should go. Mary.
I want to thank everybody as well, because I know how hard this is. I want to ask, I understand, Matt, your desire to be on record, but unless I'm missing something, we have a record. We know what we are. We have a blueprint of what we're supposed to be getting to, but right now, do we have to have a commitment to money that I don't know if we have, or the time in the near future to spend? And we're not the money side of this. I get it's the finance and the city council, and they, you know, we're the projects people. That's what I kind of think of us. We're the committee. We've got the ideas. We're generating a concept. I believe we have to listen to all sides. So, and the committee has spoken. But at the same time, I know that it's a priority list that we've talked about, because the city council asked us, what is your priority? But do we have a deadline to meet that priority? That's where I'm getting hung up right now, is why do we have, I mean, can we use this as a meeting of, like we read, number 5 says, chair report, event center perspective. Can we sit on this and think about it? Because are we going to spend the money tomorrow? Do we have the money tomorrow? Can this be a point in time, a discussion? It's an agenda item, because quite frankly, I think in the next agenda item, we're still talking about concepts and ideas, and we have given, I believe, the last meeting in July, the fields people and Rob the directive to share the property that all of this is fitting on. And we were supposed to come back and talk about that property. How does one committee, one architect in his plan spin on top of the other one? Because we've been told they're talking to each other, but we haven't been presented that information yet. So in my mind, I mean, maybe it's been given to us through emails, but we haven't discussed it. We haven't talked about it. We haven't spoken to the next steps of who we need to say. School, we got to get the money, the property from the school, or is it the city, or joint, or, you know, that stuff is still not discussed at this level of our committee. Am I wrong, or am I missing something?
So couple things. There's 3 kind of areas that I believe we have. Number 1 is our committee, the Investment Willmar Board, decides the priority list, and then we take it through the process. The subcommittees bring the concepts and the architects and the numbers to us, and they decide the specifics, like Mary did with Swanson. The council and the Steve Okens and Brian would decide funding. So I do want to get stuff in the pipeline, so people can start planning and scheduling. You know how long things take, right? Just to get stuff through the process. So I do want to get the fields, their budget up through the priority list. And if Steve Okens and Brian and the council says we're not comfortable financing that, fine, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I want to get the fields, the funding. I want to get the event center their 2 million. And we need to do either the locker rooms and the remodeling. I'm not sure the city council is going to approve locker rooms right now and remodeling. I don't know that. I don't know that. I mean, so again, so what I'd like to do, I wanted to bring this proposal, and I did email this to all of the event center committee, not all of them. I didn't have everybody's email, but I got, Rob asked me, can I send this to everybody? I said, share it with everybody. I wanted to make sure that they know. So I do think Robbins Island's got some money, Swanson got some money. I want to get the fields some funding and the event center some funding. So I'm comfortable making a motion tonight and we can vote. We have 7 people and we can go whichever way we want, and I'll be fine with either one. They're both great upgrades. I just disagree with it. And if the city council disagrees with what the Invest in Willmar group brings to them, they're going to shut it down too. So then I don't know who raised their hand first.
Audrey.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Councilmember Nelson.
Let Dennis go. That's fine.
Thanks a lot. I've got a couple of thoughts, but first of all, I have one question that it's come up a couple of times and I'm not familiar with, and this has to do with the remodeling of the locker rooms. And as I understood it, that was remodeling for the varsity hockey team. And the varsity hockey team, that's a school function, it seems to me. And spending whatever it is, $1 million on locker rooms for the school is a question. So that's a question I have in my mind, and I don't expect an answer necessarily. I think it would be prudent, Mr. Chair, to take this whole thing for information. There's some emotion here, and I think there's people that are still trying to think through what is the best way to get this accomplished, because we could divide this thing, our committee structure, everything could really go awry if we don't handle this correctly. So I'd like you to consider taking this for information and not taking action tonight.
Thank you, Dennis. Audrey?
I'm going to agree with Mr. Anderson. I would ask us to take this for information. I think we've got some financial information coming, and maybe that'll shed light on that there is more that we can do than we think we can do. And I would ask for us to wait for that. That's what we talked about with the rec fields. I think we have presentations to hear from regarding costs, et cetera. And so I would ask you to take this for information and hopefully not divide any further with that. I know it's emotional. I know I don't like how we got here, but we're here, and I think we just need to take a breath and wait for some financial information.
Tony, thank you.
Hopefully, Dennis, this will help, and for the group. The locker rooms are for the users of the event center, but also it's kind of a joint combination for the rec fields, because soccer tournaments, football teams would come in and then use those locker rooms because they'd be easily accessible from the north side of the civic center or from the rec field. So they would use those as well. I know they weren't specifically for any particular team or the Warhawks or anything that I'm aware of with that. And I do agree that if we knew we were going to hit our $30 million, it's really a moot point, isn't it? And we probably need some more numbers and to make sure that are we on projection, and then are we being smart with our dollars? And as the Invest in Willmar committee, we are the oversight group. I certainly don't want to nitpick the subcommittee or micromanage, but I do want the event center group to understand that we don't have all the money. You know, I'm an optimist. We may have it, but we need to be prudent with our dollars, and we want to fund things that aren't going to add additional costs to the city that all of our citizens and our youth can utilize.
This is Gretchen. I'm gonna raise my hand by voice if I could. I want to make a couple comments. First, I apologize, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to the fact that someone didn't have email addresses when they were emailing us as a committee member for well over a year. So there was purposeful withheld information from certain people of a committee. Next, I just want to clarify for the locker room portion, there are 2 sets of locker rooms. I want to make sure everyone is thinking, or we're talking about the right one. There are the locker rooms connected to the Cardinal Arena There are separate locker rooms that would be built with the rec and event center. We are talking about the ones connected to the ice rink. I just want to make sure that that's clarified for those that maybe didn't know that there were multiple locker rooms as part of like this entire project.
Thank you, Gretchen. And yes, I have emailed individuals if they're specifically familiar with the ice arena a little bit more than other people that I've not seen out there as much. So yes, I do communicate with people specifically on topics, but there's never been a vote or anything. I think that's pretty normal. Council members talk together and talk about different things and what their opinions are. So thank you for the comments. I would say I'm supportive of locker rooms. I mean, the building the locker rooms as we expand the park and rec center are definitely a need. I just think in the next 2 years, my opinion is I would wait on that because you don't know if the Warhawks, it's a for-profit business. If they leave, there's another more locker room space, and then we're not using them right now. So I just thought maybe this is an opportunity to build the outdoor rink. If we're going to deal with outdoor spaces right now, the pickleball courts are a perfect example. They're packed nonstop. This could be another facility that we could offer. I think it would reach more people if we funded this now in the next year versus funding locker rooms and office spaces. That's my opinion. If people are taking that personally, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. And I represent the public and I represent a lot of people that feel the same way. That's why this is on the agenda. This wasn't, I actually talked to a couple people say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And they said, no, we got to put this out there. This is absolutely legitimate topic to be on the table right now. And if people are taking it personally, and it's not Gretchen, I know there's other individuals that are not on the call right now behind the scenes as well. So I'm sorry that you've been put in this position, Gretchen. Any other questions?
I just want to say, yeah, it's not personal for individuals. As a committee, we were tasked by Invest in Willmar to bring forward a priority list based on our project list, and specifically with the amount of $2 million. Yes, could a outdoor rink be done in that amount of money? Yes, we know that. But as a subcommittee, we made the decision that that was not the priority right now. So I just want to make sure it's clear that we were asked to make a priority list with a budget of $2 million, and that is what we presented. And the fact that it is being kind of wiped from the table or being kind of disregarded, that I think is what we are having a problem with.
Item number 6 on the agenda, Swanson Field update. Mary, go ahead.
On Monday night, we met with you at the Invest in Willmar board, and immediately following, you gave the handoff or the baton to Park and Rec board to review the project. And so we had a presentation on Monday night, and they have advanced we had some good questions from both committees. The Invest in Willmar board, we welcomed the thought process from you as well as the Park and Rec board. It was fun to see the different, the excitement behind the complex. And so now tonight at 6 o'clock, we will go to Public Works and present, the architect is on board as well to present to the Public Works. And from there on, if it's a go, then we will go to the City Council on Monday night.
Thank you, Mary. Robbins Island, I don't think we, sorry.
I would like one question answered, and I think Rob was researching, but I didn't ask Rob through email. So I'm going to put you on somebody on the spot to either answer now or in the future. But when we are letting the bids for the Swanson, is that a 2-week window or a 3-week window? We're getting some folks think it's 2 weeks and some are 3, and we just wanted to make sure that our PowerPoint was correct.
Mary, I checked with it with Sean, and because of the dollar amount, it has to be 3 weeks.
Okay. Yep, that's
Thank you,
good.
Mary.
Now we know.
Robbins Island, I don't see anybody there. Oh, Julie, I don't know if there's much. Do you have a quick update on Robbins Island?
And I can talk about Robbins Island. Rachel asked if I could fill the group in. So the contract is signed with Dunix and we're ready to go. The project will actually start on August 24th of this month. So mobilization will start moving in and the project will get going. It'll probably be end of September, first part of October when it will be able to get back out to the island and everything. So we're going to be off and running here in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Community Center, I don't believe there's probably much going there. I guess, Julie, maybe. I don't know if there's been any meetings or anything.
Are you referring to me? No, we're on hold. We're on hold until
Okay.
you know what's going to happen with the City Hall Community Center.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Julie. Stormwater, Sean, I see you're on. Do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We just had a stormwater or pre-construction meeting yesterday for the east side stormwater, which was the first priority from that list. And believe it or not, we received 12 bids for that project. So the low bid is 200 and change. So we got really favorable bids. And by approving that contract, and ordering the pipe is about 2 weeks out. So around the 1st of September, they'll start. They're thinking they could get in and get out in about 2 weeks. And so we should see them going pretty well on that, and a pretty short-lived project.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sean. And I'll move to the rec fields. Tony, do you have an update on the rec fields?
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. We were at the Public Works meeting and we weren't following correct protocol and process. So John and Rob have some updates, our updated priority list, and then we have the kind of expenses and what we feel both conservative, and then all our rec classes are, and the bubble is rented for you guys to look at. And then we're going to be looking for a motion to proceed with sending approval so we can proceed with architectural bidding and get this project rolling. So John, if you want to start. And
Yep, I can. So in our last subcommittee meeting, we have prioritized what we want to do with the softball and the youth baseball complex, as well as the rec fields. So as you know, Mary, when you do a baseball or a softball, there's lots of moving parts within that. And within our subcommittee, we have a couple of Shannon Kaler and Brent Peterson that have done a lot of work just on the different needs and that they need for their softball complex. And so we've kind of prioritized getting the 4 softball, youth baseball fields and working from the ground up. So we want to make sure that all the irrigation, the seeding, the excavation, and the fencing is done really well for that complex. And then having a storage and concession stand with that. Dugouts are going to vary depending on how much funding we have, but we would like to have one of the fields be done really nicely with nice championship dugouts and things. You know, batting cages, bullpens, bleachers, and wiring for scoreboards kind of incorporate the priority list for the rec fields. Onto the rec fields, we prioritize. We would like to have 2 turf fields. We want as much space as the community can use and the kids in the rec programming. The committee, their high priority is making sure that we have the grade beam set for the bubble and the bubble as well. If operating costs and revenue are legitimate and we're able to do that going forward. And also, depending on the budget, as well as lights on the fields for our fall rec programming is also important for our soccer and our football programs that we run through the rec as well. We do have alternates on there for the softball fields and the youth baseball fields. We want to upgrade alternates with scoreboards and upgraded dugouts. And depending on the funds, we'll be able to enhance our storage and concession stand as well with that. As far as the rec fields go, upgrades or alternates for that would be like making sure that both fields are lit and in the parking lot onto the one side of the bubble for people to park. Any questions regarding the priority list for the rec fields? Again, we don't have much for numbers right now because the architect has stopped. We just got initial numbers right now, but if we get the architect going again, we'll be able to work with them and get those numbers more dialed in.
So the priority list that we all agreed on and we made a motion, maybe need to do a quick recap. It sounds like potentially is and I have the document, you all have it. I can get it to you again. I don't know if we need to run through this again, but the priority list was Robbins Island for 3 million, Swanson for 2 million, Fields for 6 million, Event Center for 2 million. That means they can start planning those 4 groups, outdoor spaces or whatever they decide. So that is the plan, so they can start scheduling and planning. Do we need to do another motion on that? I'm confused. Can anybody tell me? I'm not saying they still have to, the fields and the event center still have to come in and present specifics on their project. We approve it, it goes to Park and Rec, Public Works, it goes to Council. But that is the next phase over the next year and a half. I believe we've all kind of had a general idea. I'd put that document together. I said it's kind of a working document. Do we need to reapprove that? Can somebody update me? It sounds like Brian.
All right. The priority list is fine. That portions of that list were brought back to the city council to re-engage the architects. They did that for Swanson. They did that for, they did it for Robbins Island to continue on with that project. So from your priority list, a request has to be brought forward to the city council to authorize re-engaging the architect. And that's the part that was missing. Just having the list is fine, but you need the council granting authorization to incur costs. They put everybody on hold. All the architects were placed on hold. Construction managers placed on hold. And in order to get them kicked back in so that they can start working and incur costs, it has to be authorized by the city council. So that process was kind of jumped over. It was kind of like, we're on the list, so we're good to go. No, we need to get authorization from the council. So what was proposed was have them, request through the normal procedure, invest in Willmar, Park and Rec, Public Works to the city council to get authorization to re-engage the architect. So that's where we're currently at. It's no different than our current city budget. Just because we put in 3 squad cars to purchase in 2021, we still come back to the city council and say, can we now buy those squad cars? It's a kind of a 2-step process. So that's where we're at, and I think we're headed in that direction. And as we talked at the last time we were together on this particular topic, I'm thinking that there shouldn't be any problem with the city council after they see the financials of the revenue coming in and our projections that the rec fields should be able to be authorized to re-engage the architect and continue on with design, plans and specs, bidding and construction next spring. I don't see a problem with it, but it's not my call. It's the city council's call. And as Councilor Nelson had mentioned earlier, we're going to get a report from finance with projections. And I think it's going to speak favorably of continuing on with these programs or these projects. So, we're not that far away from the council saying yes if they agree. So that's where we're at.
Did we want to, Rob, did you want to, Tony mentioned about having some information on the bubble expenses and revenue. Do you want to touch on that?
I surely can. I can send out the Excel file that I shared with Tony and John about some of the programs that we could offer during the dome season. We broke it down into 2 different sessions, basically, one before the holiday break and one after the holiday break. Really working with that evening programming piece of the bubble and breaking the fields down into 3 separate sections of the bubble. And granted, this is going to determine a little bit on the size of the bubble that we would have. Dealing with the other bubble managers that are out there, there's wide ranges of bubbles. If we go from, just the size of the inside of a football field, or if we go on the outside of the football field, those dictate a little bit about what the utilities costs will be and what some of the programming opportunities that can happen at that facility. So when we looked at it and worked our numbers out, basically it's offering programs 2 times a week. So it'd be Monday through Sunday that the programming would happen. Wednesdays would be designated for rentals and adult programming. If we filled up all of our programming from 6 o'clock on, and we projected to have 30 participants in each one of those hour time slots per field event. So it'd be 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, because that's how many fields you have. We project that in our session 1, we could generate just over $100,000 for that session 1. And that's with the youth programming, adult programming, and rentals. We also broke it down into that's being 100%, 30 participants in every one of those programs from kindergarten up to 12th grade. And then we broke it down to a 75%, a 50%, and a 25%. Probably more realistically, we would be in that 50 to 75% of capacity. So, 75% is right around 76,000, and 50% is around $50,000. So now if we looked at session 2, the same type of a format, it's a little bit of a longer season. So we could generate, if we were again 100% full capacity, we could reach about $126,000. So you break that down to 75%, 50%, 75 you're going to be at 94,000, 50% is 63,000. Realistically, I think that's where we're going to be at. If we're talking to Tony and John, I just used the 50%, so you're going to be right around $113,000 worth of revenue that you're going to be able to bring in. When we look at expenses, talking to the other dome managers, it's roughly going to be anything between $20,000 and $25,000 to run that facility with just utilities. Okay, again, that is going to be determined on the size of the dome that we have, and that's going to be for 6 months. So, we're looking at anything between $150,000 to heat that building. And then if you look at part-time employees, officials, and front desk people, we're probably looking at another close to $50,000 for staffing wise. So altogether, for expense wise, it's going to be really close to that $200,000 mark. So if we just use the percentage of 50%, we'll probably be able to, bring in about half the revenue of what the expense would be. Just so that it's kind of apples to apples, it's very similar to what running a hockey facility or an ice rink would be. Because right now at the Civic Center, we're between 52 and 54% revenue to expense. Again, this determines on the size of the dome that we have. You can fluctuate the heat a little bit, but talking to the other rink managers, if you get it too cold, your participants aren't going to like it, and it's going to be a happy medium depending on our location, with the wind factor and everything like that. Also, we
Thanks for the update. I think,
we also have the time
Sorry, go
between
ahead.
7 and 3 timeframes that we could do some other rentals with daycare providers or rentals of, schools coming. But I think a conversation could happen with the school per se, if they want to use the facility for Phi A classes or cardinal conditioning, or even after school athletics, that those conversations could happen as well to generate a little bit more revenue.
Tony, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Rob just clarified it. Rob is speaking like 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. or maybe 11. There's still that during the daytime that's available for people to use that as a walking track, other activities. Plymouth uses it. A lot of moms and dads that have their kids at home will use it, or daycares will use it. They'll have a little indoor playground inside the bubble. And certainly there's opportunities for schools to rent that right after school, 3 to 5. And so we think we're being very conservative. And why we're bringing you that information on the bubble right away, because the pro forma of income that could be generated is going to play a part in our decision making as costs, and also with the projected sales tax, if we are going to put the bubble in right away or if we're going to hold on the bubble. But like John said, we want to put that infrastructure in one of the fields so that we don't have to tear up a field if we decide to do that later when the economics of the situation would improve. So that, I know this seems a little premature, but that's why we're doing that. So when we come back to the group, if we get approval tonight, the bubble may or may not be a priority, or it may be an alternate, okay?
Thank you, Tony. Brian, I think you and then Audrey. Brian, did you have a comment? And
Yeah,
guys,
I was just
folks,
gonna-
try to not move around.
Yeah, I'm at City Hall and it has a very weak public Wi-Fi system. I think the information that Rob provided was good, and it needs to be part of the discussion, because as Matt, as you laid out, part of the whole concept is to not burden the operational budget with projects. If you can get projects up and running without placing too big of a burden on the taxpayer, those are the higher priority ones. I think I've heard you say that in the past. So having that information available is good, and I hope the committee, can sort through all of those issues and come back with a project with all the parts that they want to put before the city council at some date in the future.
Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry, did anybody else have anything? Okay, so our next meeting is September 9th, Wednesday at 4 p.m. I should be able to make that. I've got it on my calendar. If you have any agenda items, make sure to send them. Mary?
I didn't
Go ahead,
realize
Mary.
we were going to conclude the meeting. So going back to the beginning of this conversation, when the city administrator said, and I just want to be crystal clear on the process. So who or when does the city council, who brings that forward to re-engage the money for the architects for this spot, for this project?
I think I can help clarify this. I would like to make a motion that the Invest in Willmar Committee allow the Rec Field Subcommittee to re-engage the architects to draw up our plans for the rec fields.
Second.
So that, okay, so I got a motion. Tony's got a motion on the table. Dennis seconds it regarding moving up the priority list and re-engaging with the architects. Discussion. Audrey?
I had asked to speak before, but I
Yep,
thought
Audrey.
that Mr. Gamet, I had asked to speak before, but I
I'm
thought
sorry,
that
I didn't. Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, Audrey. Can you speak again? I didn't hear what you said.
Okay. I had raised my hand to speak before, but I thought that Mr. Gramitz had very clearly said that we were not going to take action tonight. We had this conversation at Public Works. We've set up to hear about the finance. I think to bring it to the council to ask for $6 million right now is not appropriate. We have not had a formal presentation. There were figures thrown out tonight. We did not see the information. It's not ready to go through the committee structure. I don't know why we are pushing so hard right now. We took steps to bring forth finance information to see what we can do, and I don't understand why we're not waiting. I am voting no. This should not go forward until we are clarified with what we can do next year or what we're going to do next. And Mr. Gramitz just said that, to bring it back at a different time.
I appreciate your comments, Audrey. And I will say, Tony, go ahead.
I think, I don't mean to speak for the city administrator, but I think he was referencing our discussion about the event center. And what we're asking for is not the full $6 million. We're just asking if we can re-engage the architects to help us with plans and then to get bids to see if it's competitive. And that's all I'm asking. I'm not saying we're moving forward with the project at all. I think to build, I think we're asking for the so we can talk to the architect so that we can make a formal presentation back to you, because we're not even at that point yet.
I understand, but when we did that with Swanson, we knew that we could afford to move forward with $5 million in bonding. We had taken those steps first when we instructed them to keep going. So if I'm wrong, help me, but I am voting no. This is not ready to go. And we do not know what we can afford to do. And we haven't heard what our commitment, or what our costs are for architects at this point in time that we have to pay cash for. So I'm confused. I don't see why waiting one more meeting and getting the information and presenting it in a format that we could all see and hear would be wrong for us to do at this time.
I think all we're asking is permission to do this, and then it's up to you and the council to decide after you have the financial picture. I think the council needs to know, and Public Works needs, or finance needs to know that we're ready when they're ready. We're not trying to force their hand or make you do something not. And I would ask the other members of the board if I'm hearing something different today, or am I wrong? Thank you.
Dennis, and folks, try to not move too much when you're talking. Dennis.
I think we should defer to Brian
Dennis.
and see if he can get us straightened out on this, because I tend to agree with Tony that we're just looking to re-engage the architects so we can get some numbers, but maybe I'm wrong.
I would recommend that, well, I'll take that back. I won't recommend anything. I would say asking the city council to re-engage the architect is perfectly fine. They may not make a decision that night because they don't have the financial analysis, or it occurs at the same meeting where they get their finance gets their information and it comes to the city council, and then your request coincides at the same time and it gets dealt with all at once. But I don't think I have any problem with you moving on it to re-engage, to create enough documentation to then come back to the Invest in Willmar at some future date to sit there and say, okay, now we're ready. Now we want to get permission to go out and advertise for bids. At some point, the council's going to have to approve it. It may not be this month. It might be next month, but I don't think you're asking to re-engage is necessarily, a problem at this point in time. You can do it. It's just, it'll be up to the council whether or not they want to actually do it. And then the ball's in their court.
So Brian, let me just try to recap what you said. I just have a couple of questions. And so what are you saying? I want to try to understand this. I think so. If they can re-engage with the architect, then that means it might take 3 to 4 or 5 months before they come back to invest in Willmar. And then we say, we like it, like Mary did last night. It might take 3, 4, 5 months. I don't know. They come back, and then we go through Park and Rec, through Public Works, back up to council, and then council might say, we're not doing 6 million right now. We can't afford it. What am I missing here? I'm not sure why. Because that's the next project from the priority list, I believe. I mean, would we want the next one to start working if 6 to 9 months we're going to hopefully be doing something? Go ahead, Sean.
John?
With my connection or your guys's? Sean, can you speak?
Yeah, I'm having a really bad reception here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We have been, I think this committee, we get to this point, and every time there's a different reaction. We get to this point of where we're supposed to be moving a plan forward, and there's always the discussion of, do we have the dollars to pay for the entire plan? And we did that with Robbins Island, and we went, and the council did not say we had the money to do that, and so we cleaved it back. For Swanson, we did the money litmus test first, and then we came back here. And so I'm hearing that we have enough money to do the architectural planning for this particular project, and I think that's all the question is. Again, this will be more like the Robbins Island, I would imagine, and that we'll get the plan, and then we will see afterwards whether there are the dollars for it. It seems like the funding keeps getting us off the rails in different times and projects. I can tell you that some people were not happy when we did the Robbins Island project the way we did. They thought it should have been discussed here first. Others say the Swanson Field went right because we had the dollars beforehand and then we came here. I just want to see these projects happen, and the only way to keep them going forward is to keep moving. And if we have the dollars to do the planning right now, this one just looks a lot like Robbins Island to me. So I'm in favor of what Brian is talking about, is saying let's start doing the planning, and then we'll deal with the dollars when we get to them, because the project's going to happen some way or the other in some format or another. So this is just a step in that process. I don't have a problem as long as we continue to move these things forward. I don't think we're approving $6 million.
Thank you for your comments. And I guess I would reiterate back to, I'll make it really quick. The subcommittees do the planning and the concepts and the designing with the architects. Vest and Willmar, we set the priority list of what we want to see. Council decides if and when to fund. Any other comments? Otherwise, we got a motion on the table to move forward. Audrey, Council Member Nelson.
I am sorry to be frustrated with this, but there was more documentation brought to the Public Works Committee and sent back than there was presented tonight. And I just am frustrated that we can't have some, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the process. If we're willing to spend the architect money, even though we don't know if we can go forward, then that's what the motion is for, is to pursue with that. That's one thing. I just wish we could follow a process. And that's my frustration. And I'm sorry for that. I was not expecting for this to be brought forward tonight. I thought we had agreed to look at the information, and it was clarified that we would have that at the next meeting. And so that's my frustration. You know that I support these projects. I just think it would be easier if we had a few more pieces of time before we move ahead.
I appreciate the comments, Audrey. Okay, at this point, I'd like to go ahead and do a roll call on the motion on the table to move forward with the architect and the project as far as taking the next step. Sawatsky,
Aye.
Matt,
roll call.
Matt,
Yep. Am I missing a step?
no, not necessarily a step, but I think you're making a motion to request the city council authorize the re-engagement of the architects for the design work for this project. Is that correct? That's how I would
That's it.
read
And
it.
also that's all we're doing. And also, we would want, obviously, the committee members to use their, be very careful about, using those resources and be due diligent about that. So yes, you're correct. That is the motion, Brian. And thank you for clearing. That was a good point. Thank you. Great job. Sawatsky.
Well, do we have a second? I'm sorry, I'm behind here a little bit. Do we have a second?
Yeah, we do have a second. We just had discussion.
Oh, okay. Aye.
You were, okay, so, okay, sorry. Ammon,
Yes, aye.
Kono,
Aye. Yes.
Anderson,
Aye.
Paul, Muskie,
I think he
Councilmember Muskie.
Aye.
Oh, I see him. Councilmember Nelson,
No.
and myself as a chair, I would vote aye. So that would be 7 ayes and 1 no. So that motion carries. And if we can make sure that that was noted as Brian stated it, so we don't have any issues with that. So on that note, Mary.
So my question before and is again, who presents this, who's going forward with this question to release the money to the next step? I just want to know who does it. Is it Rob? Is it Matt? Is it the city administrator? Is it the city council members? Is it me? I don't know who does what next, because we've never had to, this has never been in front of us before to unleash the conversation. So who does what?
Okay, okay, so Mary, I believe the people that make the motion in that committee need to see this through. So Tony and John may need to make sure this gets to the rec center, communicate with Rob. They need the park and rec department. They need to go to the finance or the public works and the council. So whoever originates the motion and drives the action, they need to see it through and work with Rob and Brian on making sure that that happens. Okay, that's my answer to the question. And if we want to have a different system or talk about doing that differently, that's fine. I think you're making a really good point, because that's how I see it. Okay, let's go with that for now. We can talk about that if we want to do it differently later. Brian, were we okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so anything that you want on the agenda, September 9th, 4 p.m. is the next meeting. Send it to Janelle, Mary, and myself, and we will get that on. I appreciate everybody's time and effort. Go ahead, Audrey.
I would just put a request in that the information that was presented to us tonight verbally be sent to us in written form, the information that was available, so that we can be positive about it the next time. Thank you.
I have a question for the council members and the city administrator. Would it be best with the motion that we
Okay, thank you.
would it be best with the motion we made tonight? Would that just go, does that go directly to city council, or does that need to be vetted, the standard process, Park and Rec, Public Works, and then the council for approval to, allow us to engage the architect.
Go ahead, John.
It's just my opinion, but that was a motion made by the council to stop the architect doing that it would seem appropriate that would come from the city administrator, in my opinion. They just have to fill out the form, then they bring it to the council, get on the agenda. So I would be comfortable because it was a council action, and if I don't know, it has to go through all that committee structure again. I think it's something that the council said they could at any time take that off. We were just looking for some guidance to do that. I think it would be appropriate for either a city administrator or for Rob to bring that forward. I think you identified the two people that should do it. I don't think it needs to be put through a bunch of committees. That doesn't make sense to me.
Councilmember Nelson.
I'll just ask for our administrators, because we usually don't add action items on unless they've come from a committee. So that's the process that we have in place, and I'm confused with what we're doing and not doing. So I would ask Administrator Gramitz for the correct way to move this forward.
Either way is correct. There's no reason the city council cannot address direct items. They have in the past. We've brought planning commission reports directly to the council. We've brought park and rec decisions directly to the council. And then we've also gone through the committees. So I guess I would agree with Sean. The park and rec and public works have already approved these on to the city council. It was the council that made the decision to, in essence, place them on hold. So any request has already received approval. It's up to the council when they receive the request to release that hold on this project to then understand the financial ramifications. And at that point in time, I would expect that the finance will have had seen the financial projections through their committee, and then that will come to the council, and these two issues will come together, to be quite honest, almost at the same time.
It would be helpful if they did have both sides there when we did that to help us make the decision. So I'll respect that comment. Thank you.
Has the council seen the?
Thank you, Brian. And I think my thought on that,
It was me. Has the council
My
seen
thought
the
on that.
priority list? Do we need to submit that to the council? Have they seen our priority list, the Invest in Willmar priority list?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back through the paperwork and see if that priority list had been forwarded. I believe it had been, or at least they're knowledgeable of it because they've seen your minutes. But I don't know that they've actually taken official action and said, we hereby adopt the priority limits. Maybe somebody else has information on it.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, if that's our priority list, does that need to be taken action on? I mean, it's obviously a working document. We're trying to do the best we can. Things change. I'd like that to be at the council. I don't know. I don't care if they need to formally motion and approve it. I'd like them to see that. I wrote that up. It kind of gives a little structure, a blueprint. So I don't care if they approve it or not, but if we need to, I guess we can. So, Sean.
City Administrator Gramitz is correct. We have not officially approved that. It was tied to minutes, but those minutes aren't, an official committee because we're, kind of off the side. But I think it would be wise to perhaps have that done. We're going to have a lot of new council members coming on board. It would be a good idea to have that solidified so there's some continuity and everybody understands where we were at. So it hasn't officially gone before the council, but it was when the minutes were accepted from the things that was tied to it. So they should be aware of it, but it hasn't had an official action.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Council Member Nelson.
Thank you. I think we've talked about this one before too, but the master plan out there has never been approved either. And from the things that you are talking about, doing, it would feel like long-term that somehow that master plan should be approved, so that when we talk about the pieces of that and priority list, we could see how it fits into the master plan. And when we asked for that, it was sent in an email, but there was never anything done more than that. And so that's a question I think that for me, the lack of the visual things that we're being asked to do is difficult. And I think the easier you make it for all of the players, since it's complicated, to see and view and understand would be helpful for less controversy in meetings.
I think that's a great point. Actually, Janelle and Mary, can we make a point to have the master plan on the September 9th, the presentation? Whoever is best can present that, whether it's, whoever can present that. Please make a note on that if you could. Brian.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Brian.
The plan that was submitted by Rob by email at the last meeting, I think that it wasn't necessarily a complete plan because the architects got shut down. They never really, finished it. It's a concept, but it's not necessarily a finished concept. And quite honestly, I need that master plan to go to the school district to say, how much area do I actually need to acquire from you? So we really do need that master plan finalized, approved, so we can then move on to the next steps. So yeah, I would say we, partly maybe some work still has to be done on it, but Rob and I will talk about this, after the meeting to see what we have and what we possibly need in order to submit it to the Invest in Willmar as a master plan and ultimately to the city council.
Well, let's at least put that on the agenda for next meeting, because I think 90 or 95% of that's complete, and at least gives us something to look at for conversation. Mary.
Thank you for everybody doing what you're doing. I guess, when this board create a ladder of the committees that the projects had to go through. Now we're turning the page, and because of COVID and stopping everything, well, not COVID, but just lack of money coming in, we never talked about the next plan on how to lift or unlock those projects. And I think that's what we're getting messed up in, and my mind is not figuring out how to do that, because our board never, I think we're still creating what our board, the steps to what we're supposed to be doing with this $30 million 6 projects. So all of a sudden, when we have to release this money and architectures to go forward, we don't have a plan because we've never talked about a plan. And so I think that's why when you guys were talking about going up the ladder to getting all these things this released, I mean, that's going to be 3 months out again just to get the monies released. So when Brian says, in my mind, you can do one or the other, just go to the city council, and maybe it's public works first and then or finance and then city council. But I mean, we've never put on paper this part of the plan. And I think that's what we're getting hung up on. And whether we like procedure or not, and whether or not we like government or not, we got to have a plan. And I think that's why I'm not understanding, or maybe other people are not understanding, and I need to know who has to do that next thing. And we can quit talking about it tonight, but I think maybe Matt, you and I and the administrator, or maybe one of the city council members can help us offline figure out the roadmap to how to unleash the monies going forward and presenting that, and maybe we can all rest better. But this is government, and we got to figure this out. And just talking about the stuff doesn't work in my head. I need to see the plan. With that, I have 20 minutes, and we have to get to our next meeting for Public Works, but it looks like Councilmember Osmus has a question.
Okay, speaking of the Public Works, Public Safety, yes, we are meeting at 6. Would it help the process here if we brought this up at that meeting, if it's not on even if it's not on that agenda, and then it can go from that committee up to the council on Monday?
So my opinion, Julie, is I don't think that hurts, but here's the thing on that. I mean, we're talking about funding here. So that's we're talking about dollars. And I've always said invest in Willmar subcommittees and Park and Rec. They're not part of the funding. I think that's really Brian's message, that the only reason this skips a couple steps, it's funding, it's dollars. That's Steve Okins, that's the city council. So that's my opinion. You certainly could, but the more people that are aware, the better. But I think, again, that priority list hopefully sets it up. And then back to what Mary said, I think funding is going to drive what we do next. And that's why we're watching it close with Steve. Councilmember Nelson.
I appreciate Julie's, Councilmember Osmus's willingness to do that. However, I think Brian gave us we can go direct to council with it, and Councilmember Meske has said that too. And I personally would like to see a document created, that we follow a procedure and not just throw something at Public Works when we're making a major decision tonight. I think that needs to be clean, and this can come, and if we agreed that we can bring it right to council, then we should do that and not encumber the Public Works with it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody taking the time tonight. If anybody feels the need to call a meeting like Mary did before the next scheduled meeting, which is September 9th, I just want to keep those regularly scheduled monthly meetings. Otherwise, it gets too confusing if we move those around. Hopefully that continues to work for people. If anybody coming into September has a problem, please let us know. The more people on the call, the better. So I appreciate everybody taking the time. And at this moment, I would love to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. A motion from Dennis and a second from Audrey to adjourn the meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you again.
This conference will now be recorded.